It's the Fitness Lab Pittsburgh podcast, a new episode every week. A podcast about movement, part of making your life complete. Fitness Lab Pittsburgh, aka FitLabPGH, brings you interviews with people in the Pittsburgh area who understand movement is part of what makes life complete. Looking for a new movement idea or just want to hear interesting stories about people who make movement a priority? This is the podcast for you. Whether you consider the gym, dojo, or fitness studio your third place, or just want to learn more about movement, activity, and fitness to enhance your life, give FitLabPGH a listen. We interview locals in the Pittsburgh area who make Pittsburgh a great place to move. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play, or check out our website for other subscription options. Subscribing is free and gives you notifications when we release new episodes. Each podcast episode will be long enough to pique your interest and short enough to hold your attention. Have an idea for an episode? Know somebody we should interview? Or just want to connect with us? Drop us an email, fitlabpgh@gmail.com, or follow us on Twitter or Instagram at fitlabpgh. Already a fan of FitLabPGH? Check out our sister podcast, Moving to Live. Moving to Live is a podcast for movement professionals and amateur aficionados. Moving to Live offers weekly interviews with movement professionals featuring topics from career development to coaching tips and education resources to advice for parents of student athletes. We look forward to hearing from you, and we hope you enjoy our next interview, starting now. FitLabPGH and our sister podcast, Moving to Live, treat movement as a lifestyle. I think many of you will agree that cycling is a lifestyle as well as a great activity. We sat down with Evan Robinson, co-owner of Steady State Cycles, and talked about his path to cycling and how he and his partner came to open Steady State Cycles in Fox Chapel. Don't forget, FitLab Pittsburgh also releases 3 movement tip and lifestyle hack videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, as well as a FitLab Pittsburgh Features, a written feature every Thursday that features 2-legged and 4-legged animals. If you like what you hear, please leave us some feedback on Apple Podcasts or whatever your podcast app. And now, on to the interview. FitLabPGH back with another podcast. You have heard us joke before that one of the reasons we started our podcast in Pittsburgh is because people don't like to go through bridges and across tunnels. And so we wanted to make people aware of the variety of movement and movement opportunities in the Pittsburgh area. So today we have gone through a tunnel across 2 bridges, and we are here in Fox Chapel at Steady State Cycles. We're here with Evan Robinson. He's going to tell us about Steady State Cycles, and I know that it'll be a good interview because I've often joked before that every interview we've had in a coffee shop where I get coffee, it's a good interview, and Evan and Steady State Cycles actually have an espresso machine in their shop. So if you're not a cyclist, but you're a coffee fan, come in, buy a water bottle, buy a stem, buy a cycling hat, and you can probably con them into making you some coffee. So Evan, thanks for taking time to talk to FitLabPGH.
Thanks for having me.
I think we want to get it out first. You are not the only owner of Steady State. You have a partner.
Yes. Steve, my business partner, mechanic extraordinaire, bike racer, bike racing aficionado. Couldn't do this without him.
And Steady State is a cycling shop in Fox Chapel. How long have you been in existence?
We have been in existence for about 13 months. We've been in our location here in Fox Chapel since March 2019.
And my favorite question, we were talking about this before recording, is are you a Pittsburgh native? If so, why are you still here? If not, what brought you here?
I am a Pittsburgh native. I grew up in the South Hills. I left for a little bit of time, went west, did some things, did some stuff, rode some bikes, and then pretty much came back for this opportunity.
And I know we were talking beforehand and you were in the coffee business for a while. You do cycling now. I'm always curious with people that we interview for FitLab Pittsburgh. Were you active in some sort of sports or activities as a kid? And if so, was it because mom and dad said, hey, get out of the house? Or maybe mom and dad were active? Or did you find cycling and movement when you were reaching adulthood?
Cycling for me as a kid was a little bit of mom and dad, get out of here. bikes have always sort of represented freedom, where, you know, as a kid, I would leave the house on like a BMX bike and go to BMX trails. Freshman year of college, my stepmom's brother gave me like a GT mountain bike, and that was for living in the dorms. Like, that was freedom. I could go anywhere. I could go there at any time. I didn't have to worry about when the buses ran, or didn't have a car. Like, it was very easy to go wherever I needed to go, whenever I needed to go, where a lot of people felt sort of like trapped on campus. So.
And I know we were talking before starting recording, you grew up in Bethel Park. Did you ever go to the South Park BMX track and race at the BMX track?
I never raced at the BMX track, but I have definitely hung out at the BMX track a lot as a kid.
And we joke in Pittsburgh, people don't like to move away from their neighborhood. So you said this was this opportunity that brought you back. Having grown up in Bethel Park, was there ever a doubt or a question? It's like, wow, I'm going to be way over in Fox Chapel, or was it just kind of, this is the right opportunity? If I need to get back to Bethel Park, or I want to go to the roads of South Hills, I can always drive or ride my bike.
I definitely ride my bike out there more than go out there for any other things. My mom still lives out there. I'll go see my mom, do some South Parker, sort of Finleyville, Mon Valley loops. But being over here was more sort of thought about as a good location based off of where to lead rides out of. There are good road rides out of the shop here, and being a Pittsburgher, can be a little, it could feel like being a little bit of a fish out of water on this side of the river. My mom, who has lived in Pittsburgh on and off for her entire life, calls me for directions when she's coming over here. 28, I think, to her is still the way it was, 15, 20 years ago, where they did a massive rebuild on it, and it flows way better than it ever has.
And I know it's always curious when people start a business. What was it that made you think at some point in time, I want to have a bike shop? Was this when you were in college and you got the GT mountain bike and you're like, I think a bike shop would be the way to go? Or how did you fall into this path? Because very few people wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to start a bike shop.
It was what we needed to do. Both Steve and I have worked in shops for over a decade. There's a certain amount of thought process that goes into opening a bike shop that I don't think we were necessarily having as our motivation. It was the correct path to take. There are plenty of places in town to work, and there are plenty of different ways to do things, but this was a really solid opportunity for us to do our things our way.
And I know it's always curious that some people who start businesses, it's just a solo business, and there's Evan, the bike shop owner, but you've made it very clear throughout that you are partners. How was it that the two of you connected? Because I know a lot of times you meet people on a ride and they kind of become friends, but there's a big difference between that and saying, hey, let's pool our monies, let's put our future together and work together. And that's something that's a little bit different than somebody on a bike ride that, hey, let me suck your wheel for a few miles because I'm feeling a little tired.
Well, the bike community, especially 15 years ago in Pittsburgh, was very, very small. It seemed like there was a period of time where if you saw somebody, especially in the winter, like if you saw somebody riding their bike by, there was a strong chance that you knew them. So, I don't remember specifically when I met, Steve. We've gone to bike races together. We have a lot of mutual friends, have ridden bikes together. When I was working at the bike shop Big Bang Bicycles, which had like a reputation for very high quality service and very high quality products. When I wanted to move on and try something different, one of the stipulations was that you have to replace yourself. You have to find somebody to like take over your spot. And Steve at that time was working at Iron City Bikes, and it was just a natural fit. Like, it was clear that that was the spot that he needed to go to. And so in working elsewhere, coming back to town, personally having a connection with that bike shop on and off as I have sort of meandered through working there. When that shop closed about 1.5 years ago, it was very clear that this is what needed to come out of that. This is what we needed to do to sort of fill that void.
We're talking with Evan Robinson. He's one of the co-owners of Steady State Cycles. Evan, I think it's interesting you commented that 10 or 15 years ago, the bike community in Pittsburgh was really, really small. And if you saw somebody riding in the winter, you kind of looked twice, because you were referred to us by Mike Seamans, who owns a Muay Thai studio in Squirrel Hill. And he said essentially the same thing. So I almost suspect Mike called you up and said, hey, use this line also.
There's a lot of us that feel that way. Like, there at the Bike Pittsburgh Bike Fest parties, at one of the last ones, there was a group photo of like everybody that was at the first Bike Fest party. And like, Mikey's a good friend. He put out one of my band's records, like there is, I guess even touching on his podcast, he talks a lot about like subcultures in Pittsburgh, cycling having its own specific subculture in Pittsburgh, and how everybody sort of relates to that. It is a community, it is a group of people that, in addition to having similar things in common, became friends.
I think one of the main purposes of FitLab Pittsburgh is we want to promote movement, because we really believe movement is a lifestyle. I think the bike community, as you said, if you're out riding in the middle of winter, I know we interviewed a gentleman who's an attorney downtown, and he talks about commuting by bike in the winter and having icicles on his face. So it really is something you have to take it as a lifestyle, not it's a nice day. I think one of the things about Pittsburgh that some people recognize, and I'm sure you do, is the fact that with all these rails to trails around here, and as you said, the variety of roads, as soon as I told you I was from the South Hills, you said, oh, did you ride here? Did you ride there? But a lot of people maybe are just getting into movement, and they don't really recognize that bicycling can be a wonderful sport. It can be a wonderful activity. And they don't really understand, well, why do I need to go to a bike shop? Why can't I go to my favorite big box store? Or why can't I go to Craigslist and just say, ooh, I like the color of that one? So I think this is a great opportunity to educate people who are listening, or maybe somebody hears it and says, hey, let me show this to my friend and tell them this is why you need to go to Steady State or one of the other shops around here. So you've got a bike shop. You're wearing your bike shop t-shirt. You live in Bloomfield. You head out to one of the bars or something. You're having a beer, and somebody says, hey, what is it? Why do I need to go to a bike shop? Why can't I just go to Craigslist or one of these big box stores and buy a bike?
So the short of it, like, first off, with going to with big box stores, a lot of those bicycles are some people talk about, I think it was a Dirt Rag article a bunch of years ago, called bicycle shaped objects, where they look like a bicycle, they have wheels, but they're not really a bicycle. There are so many times that we see bicycles come through from big box stores where they have, let's say, the braking surface on the rim brakes is a painted rim, and they're like, my brakes don't stop, and they make tons of noise. And I'm like, it's because of the painted rims, and the brakes, instead of being forged, are stamped. They're super flexible. Why would they make a bicycle like this with painted rims and brakes that don't work? And it's easy to say, I don't know. I don't know whether they would make something like that, because it's terrifying. But it's a bicycle shaped object. It hits a price point. It looks a certain way. There's certain ones that look really cool. The graphics look really cool. They're shiny. You're at Walmart. You're at Dunham's. And they're eye catching, but at the end of the day, it's a bicycle shaped object. The second thing is that, not to detract from the great bicycle builders at Walmart, etc., as they also assemble grills, patio furnitures, bikes. I
should note that at one point when I lived in Atlanta, not for Walmart, but for a sporting goods store that doesn't exist, I put together bikes, and as long as they stayed together, that was considered good enough.
Yeah. Good enough is not something you want to be riding down a hill at 30 miles an hour on. Good enough is not something you want to be standing up and putting all of your effort in to propel you forward on.
I think we need to stop. If you could repeat what you said about going down a hill at 30 miles an hour, because Pittsburgh has hills. If you ride a bike, eventually you'll end up at the top of the hill. I think that's worth repeating.
It's very easy to get up to 30 miles an hour in Pittsburgh as the gradients of hills average 6% and higher often. So not to, again, detract from the great bicycle and patio furniture assemblers at big box stores, as they are putting in the work, fighting the good fight for, deck umbrellas everywhere. At a place like Steady State Cycles, you are coming to see professionally trained mechanics, certified mechanics through Shimano, through Campagnolo, people who've gone to tech clinics at Fox Suspension, people who have done some amount of training, not only to perfect their craft, but to have it in a repetitious manner. For example, at Steady State Cycles, separate from everything being good enough, we focus on the fasteners on the bike. We have digital torque wrenches that we use on everything. Every bike that leaves here gets that used on it. So everything is tightened to manufacturer specification. So if you think about like good enough, like this is tight enough, this is true enough, we have the tools to make sure that that is actually the case, to add some amount of security and knowing that we went through a detailed process to make sure that everything got checked, and to think about the infrastructure at big box stores that don't necessarily have that. I think there's a lot of peace of mind, not only in your safety, but in the functionality of your bicycle and in going through that.
And I know one of the questions that people often ask when they want to get into cycling, because if you want to get into walking or running, go to a running store, and pretty much for less than $100, you can get a very good pair of running shoes that will allow you to train for the Pittsburgh Marathon or the Great Race or something like that. One of the things I think that often shocks new bike owners, old bike owners always have the theory there's something newer and better, which is great for shop owners, but new bike owners are like, well, bikes and bike shops are so expensive. For somebody who recognizes the rails to trails and how this is a great opportunity before maybe they're ready to go out on the road or they're not, what can they expect to spend on a bicycle? Like low end, high end, I know you can spend well, maybe not six figures, but definitely mid 5 figures with carbon fiber, titanium, electronic shifting, etc. But somebody says, I've had this big box bike. It doesn't really shift right. You've told me it won't shift right. It won't brake right. I'd like to go the next level up. What are they looking at as a starting point?
I think if you're just looking at a bicycle with no accessories, you're probably in the $500 to $600 range, depending on what you're looking for. I think as a starting point, as far as the investment of getting in, that's a bicycle that you can put one to two rides on a week throughout the year. Will be, depending on how many miles you put on it, will be serviceable for years while still being under that sort of price point. Service similar to the cost of owning cars. I think that's something that's also not taken into consideration with bicycles is servicing them. For example, it isn't something that you just buy once and then it works forever, and then someday you're like, this doesn't work anymore. And you can definitely go through that sort of life cycle of a bicycle where you wear absolutely everything out, but somewhere in there, the quality of life of that bicycle, the quality of its functionality degrades like past the point of, I personally think it being enjoyable. Similar to that, you don't want to stand up on and pedal on something that has, 4,000 miles on it with no service. with that in mind, I think that an entry-level bicycle coming in around $500, $600 is like a great way to put like a day or two a week on the trail. If you're looking to ride more than that, mountain, road, trail, I think starting to look closer to $1,000, you'd be better served. Not to say that if you don't spend $1,000, you can't ride a bicycle on any of these places, but I think that if you were looking to commit to that being a part of your lifestyle to 3 days a week all year, 5 days a week in the summer and not in the winter, I think looking around $1,000 would serve you better.
And some people maybe let out a gulp, and other people are kind of a little curious, and they're going, 2 or 3 things that maybe, what's the difference in, say, a $500 bike versus $1,100 bike? What are they going to get by spending essentially twice as much?
It differs from year to year. A lot of model years, it'll pretty much be the same frame material, it'll be the same frame. The quality of the components. Sometimes it'll be shown as there's more speeds. Like this is a 24 speed bike. You'll have a 27 speed bike if you go to the next one. It'll be a 30 speed bike, up from that. What is more so happening is every time they add a speed, they completely redesign everything. All of the teeth on the cassette are redesigned. Some manufacturers patent each specific tooth. The chains are redesigned. The plates on the outside of the chain are redesigned. The coatings that they put on the chain are redesigned. The chain rings, the spacing, all of that stuff is designed. So not that it's just one more. It is technologically one, like the next iteration. Things, I don't want to say mistakes, but like things that they wanted to improve on from before, that redesign gave them the opportunity to improve on. There is a bicycle in my stand right now with 2 gears in the front and 5 gears in the back, and the shifting on it is friction. Great bike. It's been running for 30 years. It's still going, still trying, but to say that a bike with 9 speeds in the back is just 4 more is not the case. That it's a completely different bike. And all things considered, 9-speed drivetrains were, I would say, 20 years ago. Now that we're at 11 and 12, like they are continuing to improve. Stuff gets better. Stuff keeps getting better. And on one end, it's not to say that like getting out on a bike versus not getting out a bike, you don't need a ton of speeds to do that. But if your rider experience is important to you, and there are avenues for you to find what you're looking for, or where you want your bicycle to take you, or how you want it to perform while it's taking you there.
We've mentioned a little bit about the hills in Pittsburgh, spending say $500 versus $1,000 or $1,100. What's the difference in weight going to be? Is somebody going to get a lighter bike, a heavier bike?
It'd be about the same weight. You would, at $1,000, it would be a little bit, performance-wise, a little bit stiffer, more of your energy going into propelling you forward. That I would say is maybe that, the quality of the components and how they shift, how they function together, the durability of the components themselves. There are wear items, chains, cassettes, chain rings. That stuff wears out, but your derailleurs, your shifters, the quality of the internals of those things tend to last a bit longer on a $1,000 bike.
Somebody's thinking about this. I know one of the things that you often see when you're riding around on the rails to trails or on the roads, you see somebody with a bike, either a not so nice bike or a nice bike. They don't have a helmet on. As a bike shop owner, if you can kind of comment on that. Helmets, yes. Helmets, no.
Helmets is a yes. It's a really, we're talking about like having a device to measure how tight your stem bolts are for safety. Like, absolutely, like helmet. If you are out among, like, it's America. It's a free country. You can do what you want to do. But, like at the shop, we carry only helmets with MIPS liners. They're a little bit more expensive, but it's an additional technology that they developed to not only be safe to the CPSC safety certifications that all helmets have in the United States, but an additional safety measure to help with preventing concussions from rotational forces when you crash. Not to say that it's concussion proof like some people like to think. However, that's the level of helmet that we carry here because we want you to have a safe helmet.
And I think for people who say, but helmets make me look like a geek, the justification for the helmet is then you can justify the cool looking sunglasses to go with the helmet. So then you look like a cyclist.
Oh yeah, for sure. There are cool looking helmets. There are helmets that look better than others. I think that Pittsburgh is at sometimes a very style adverse place. And I will fit a like neutral color helmet or shoe on anybody, but they make really, really cool colors in that stuff. They make really cool colors in cycling clothing. They make like really interesting looking things. And I feel like, Pittsburgh is always kind of like a half step behind. We're like, I just want black shoes. I just want a black helmet. I was like, are you going to get a white helmet? It's easier to see. You can get an oil slick helmet where it's like purple from the front, but blue from the back. There is an entire color wheel of cycling products out there. And I feel like, in addition to Pittsburgh being a no helmet place, everyone's also in a no color place. So.
And I know the final question to ask about people who are maybe just starting about bicycling, why bike shorts? Because very often you'll see somebody, they buy a bike, they go out on the rails to trails, or you see them at Bike Fest or something, and there they are in their blue jeans, and you're just watching them, they're going, it just looks uncomfortable.
Bike shorts are, the interface between you and your bicycle saddle. They are designed to make that interface more comfortable. There's a lot of time that went into both designing the saddle that you're sitting on and the bike shorts in between you. There's a lack of seams through the center of it. Over the years, they've changed the density of the chamois or pads in bicycle shorts. They changed the panels so that it fits more contoured to you. They've changed the way the elastic grippers contact your leg. It is a piece of functional clothing that is designed to make your riding experience better.
We've been talking with Evan Robinson. He is the co-owner of Steady State Cycles in Fox Chapel. I think he's giving us an interesting background on what brought him back into Pittsburgh and a good rationale why you should support your local bike shop, both for keeping small businesses in business, but more importantly for safety and enjoyment of cycling, which really is a lifetime and a lifestyle. Evan, I want to thank you for taking time to talk to FitLab Pittsburgh.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of FitLabPGH, brought to you by Moving to Live. Intro and exit music is Marathon Man by Jason Shaw. Check out the show notes for contact info for our latest guests, links to other information mentioned in the episode, and links to our sister podcast, Moving to Live. Moving to Live is a podcast about movement and exercise for professionals and amateur aficionados. Moving to Live offers topics from career development to coaching tips and education resources to advice for parents of student athletes. You can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play, or check out our website for other subscription options. Your free subscription gets you notified when we release a new episode. Questions, comments, suggestions? Email us at fitlabpgh@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter and Instagram at fitlabpgh and like us on Facebook. If you enjoy our podcasts, please tell your friends about us and consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. Make FitLabPGH a go-to place to learn more about movement in the Pittsburgh area. Until next time, keep on moving.